Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to Europe United Draft to Glory franchise mode here in NHL 26. So in last episode, if you did not catch it, we had technically our first draft and the expansion draft, and we're ready to start simulating obviously year number 1, so it's going to be exciting to see how this team does. Hypothetically, we shouldn't have a single win this season, but you never know with the sim engine if it'll give us any, but hoping for a good season from our young guys that we drafted in the last episode, and hopefully we also get some good results in terms of the draft lottery. Obviously, in a way, we almost don't want to have the first overall pick because obviously we are limited to where we could draft from, so kind of hoping for obviously a really good pick, but hopefully it's in the positions of the players that we need, because if we look at the upcoming draft class like we did in last episode, there is a couple of players that we could actually draft, which is quite exciting. Somebody like Tyson DeLuca, who is actually from Denmark, wouldn't be a bad selection. Either is Dave Antonio from Hungary, he would be a pretty solid option as well. So hoping we have a top 5 selection, because obviously that would help us a lot. I'm hoping more for a top 4 selection, of course, because obviously if we end up not getting Antonio or DeLuca, we would be forced to have to draft somebody else. Probably somebody like Novotny or Weber would have to join this team instead, but hoping that obviously we could get ourselves an elite player, because likely Antonio and DeLuca are both elite, but there's obviously a chance that both of them are not either, but I would say they're probably likely to be in that sense. Also, I feel like Dave Antonio would kind of be like a perfect fit for franchise mode with me, because obviously his name is Dave, and also that team that he plays for in the Extra Liga actually kind of reminds me of the Ice Tigers in a way, so it would be kind of funny for him to join one of our Draft to Glory franchise modes. So hoping we could get one of those two guys in for our defensive core for the future, but obviously it just depends on the draft lottery more than anything. It doesn't really matter how we simulate, because even if we have a 0-82 record, there's still a chance that we might not get the first overall pick. So with that said, let's get you guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will get into assimilating his first year and seeing what happens. So the first comment is from Cam Popplestone, who says, looking forward to this. In these early years, if you don't have a top prospect from a country you could draft from while you have top 5 picks, it might be a good idea to trade down in the draft to get a few extra picks in general to build out your roster faster in earlier seasons. Now, technically, since this is a draft to glory, I do not want to make really any trades in this franchise mode unless we absolutely have to come to that point. Like, say if it's not working in the first 10 seasons, like we're barely having a roster that we could actually list on paper, maybe we could start to kind of bend the rules a little bit. But right now I kind of want to keep it where we only have our 7 picks every single year, and we could only draft from the specific countries I mentioned in the last episode. So right now I don't think we're going to be obviously doing anything where we trade down or anything like that, but obviously that could be a thing that we go to if for some reason it's not working out that well. The next comment is from I Am Just There to Be Here. It says, to be honest, it's going to be a weird just converting a regular draft glory to a specific country version. I think that this draft glory will take longer than the past ones, being that it's one is getting a team good enough to compete for the playoffs. I think the drafts are always against the players as well, and it's so different not having a guy for your first ever pick, but next draft looks better. Good luck, Snipe. And yeah, it's going to be a very weird one, just obviously having to, like, obviously if we have the first overall pick, not going with whoever might be the best player. For instance, if there's a franchise player but he's not from the country we could take from, we might be having to be stuck with an elite player instead. I don't think it's a bad thing entirely. Like, obviously it's going to take us probably longer than a normal draft to glory, but I think just the amount of players that get drafted or whatever in the draft class are from specific countries, I don't think it's going to be as problematic as you guys might think, because I have seen a lot of guys from Hungary, for instance, in franchise mode, a lot of Swiss players. There's usually a couple, at least, guys from Denmark. Obviously, it just depends on their potential and stuff like that. But if we looked at like this first round in general, there actually is a decent amount of players from the countries that we could take from. So I'm hoping that future draft classes are like that as well. Hopefully there's less Canadians and Americans in future years, and then we could continue to draft obviously a lot of these Europeans and stuff like that. But it's definitely going to be a tough task for us, but I am up to the challenge. And like I said, if we need to, we could obviously bend the rules down the road if for some reason it's not working out that easily for us. The next comment is from Mike Garbrandt, who says, I feel like you should be allowed to trade for draft picks. You are already limited so much that it would make it a lot more enjoyable to watch. It's definitely a challenge, so being able to move up or down in the draft or have multiple picks in a round would help out a lot, especially with it setting trading to hard. Plus, not to lose a player for nothing. Hope you consider or let there be a vote. Can't wait to get this going. And so that's another comment that's pretty similar to the first one I read. And like I said, I think I'll come back to these ideas in maybe 10 seasons or so. So at least it's like around halfway point of the franchise mode. And if we don't have almost like a full roster on paper that actually could simulate decently, maybe we'll think about actually being able to trade our picks so we can move back in the draft. And we wouldn't be trading players on a roster, but we'd be moving picks instead. So it's not a terrible idea. But like I said, for right now, I want to see if this idea is doable without actually moving back in the draft. The next comment is from Chris Thomas, who says, going to be fun to watch. Technically, Czechia itself wasn't part of the USSR, but Czechoslovakia was post-World War II, and defenseman Lundstrom shouldn't be eligible as he is Swedish due to the parameters you came up with. And the second part of that comment about Lundstrom, I honestly had no idea I drafted a Swedish guy. I don't know how I blanked on when we were going through this. I probably completely forgot about my own rules, which is not a great thing. So that means, unfortunately, our pick Lundstrom is ineligible to actually play for our NHL team. So before we actually get into simulating, we are going to have to send him back down to the AHL, and he will not actually get the play on our NHL roster, which kind of sucks. Obviously, he doesn't really have much potential anyways, but we are going to have to send him down and call up the lowest end player in the AHL, which is this Korka guy, so we'll just go ahead and do that. But definitely sucks, because like I said, I thought, like, for instance, maybe I thought he was like a Danish guy or something when we drafted him, but yeah, he just unfortunately is a prospect that we will not be able to utilize on our NHL team, but that's all right. We'll probably let him go after his ELC or something like that, so it's kind of easier, because, or else if I have him still on my roster, I might completely forget again that he's Swedish, and I don't want to go run into any problems where we're running a guy from Sweden or Finland or obviously Canada, US, or any of the Russian countries. And the last and final comment is from Sandra Taco. Says, by excluding Sweden and Finland, I think you're limiting yourself a bit too much. Quality elite prospects sourced exclusively from non-Scandinavian, non-USSR nations are going to be much harder to come by. A fair compromise that could be still made, or that could still have some level of challenge, maybe to allow yourself to draft from either country, which you could decide by a coin flip. So another good idea that come through maybe in the future is obviously maybe if we do like if we're still stuck like 10 years in or something like that, and there's a Swedish or Finland player available that's really good, maybe we flip a coin and basically see if we should be able to draft him or not. Obviously, if it's the opposite of what we say, then we wouldn't be able to draft that player. So that might be another idea that we run into, but for right now, obviously we'll probably keep it like this. So with that said, I think we're finally able to get into this season. Obviously, the rookies that we're looking out for on our roster in terms of having a good season, guys like this Matej Masterliski, I don't even know his name still. Obviously, he was in our Be a Pro series, but him, Reber, our prospects, same with Vít Zahersky. So these guys, I believe, are all almost like, yeah, Czechian or Swiss, which is interesting. So those guys are all playing together. We also do have Cyril Keller, who is, I think, another Swiss guy. We also do have Adam Banak, who is our high up pick. I don't know how he's going to pan out because he has medium 6 potential, but he's obviously in a bit of a weird spot with kind of a weak roster around him. And then from a defensive standpoint, we do have a couple prospects like Vapanek, who's from Czechia as well. And I think that is it, basically, just because Lundstrom was the other guy I was thinking of. And obviously Lundstrom's from Sweden, so let's see what this team's able to do in their first season. Like I said, I expect us to fully not win a single game, but obviously the sim engine could give us a win randomly. Like, I wonder who's going to score our first goal in franchise history as well. We should probably take a look at some stuff like that too while we're at it. So let's see how our preseason goes. And obviously we're not too worried about how the regular season is going to go. The coach is probably going to say our roster's trash on paper. Let's see what he says about it. But let's do a preseason focus just to help the younger guys out a bit. And let's go some skill training. I don't really know what's a good idea for him, but season goal, obviously, he doesn't think this team is good enough. A lot of work to do, of course. Of course. We're not going to be a playoff team with a roster like this, but it'll be interesting to see how this team's looking in like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years as we go on. But let's see how this preseason is first. And then obviously the regular season will be an interesting one for sure, so we could see who gets the first goal in franchise history and all that. Also, I don't know if we really have like a thumbnail athlete yet for the series or not, because I probably should get like a screenshot of somebody. I probably should get one of Banak since he was our first ever selection right now. We might as well get a screenshot of him while we're at it. because we're going to need somebody to represent us on the thumbnail. So we might as well go for Benak, but obviously I think that might change next year depending on if we draft somebody like Dave Antonio this year or not. So let's get a little bit of a screenshot of his face. So I guess I could go to his gloves and then I could get a better screenshot. Yeah, we could get something like that. Perfect. So if I go like this, I can use this in the thumbnail. And that way you guys could have at least a player that we have on our team in the thumbnail rather than some random EA generated guy. I decided to make an NHL 25, not in 26. So, all right. So preseason obviously was not good. We lost all 8 games. I'm kind of curious on the stats from obviously some of our players. So Keller had 3 goals in 8 games. That's not actually too bad considering the rest of the team. But look at the plus minuses. I am very interested to see what the plus minuses are like at the end of an actual full NHL season. But like guys like Nils Nord Nils Nord was a minus 18 in 8 games. So this is going to be a really rough first year, but obviously we're hoping from some good results from especially guys like Benak, I would say. The other ones obviously are probably players that won't be here long term, but they're good short term options for the time being while we actually wait to build up our rosters. So our first game in franchise history is against the Winnipeg Jets, so we're probably going to get our tires absolutely pumped in this first game, but obviously it's the first game in franchise history, so we're going to sim through that, then we'll look at the box score if we do score any goals, so we can kind of see who scored the first goal for this team in franchise history, and then once we get to the end of this 25-year franchise mode, you guys could randomly bring up so-and-so's name, and it'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when he scored the first goal for our team. So our first ever game on home ice versus the Jets, an 11-2 loss. So we did score 2 goals against Connor Hellebuck, which is a very big promising start, obviously, but allowing 11 goals in our first game, obviously a pretty big issue. So I am curious on who scored goals for us in that 11-2 loss. Let's take a look. So, yeah, they scored all their goals pretty early on, and then Korka scored first for us. So, not even a prospect of ours, running in Bjorkman with the assist. Those guys aren't going to be here long term, but the first ever prospect of ours to get a point will be Reber, as Reber picks up an assist on Bjorkman's goal from Kolar's as well. So, Bjorkman with 2 points in his first game. That's relatively impressive. But obviously our stats in general, not very impressive when you see that everybody on this team almost was a minus player. The best player by far in that first game, other than Bjorkman, was definitely Reber, who had the 1 assist and even 0 as well in plus minus. So that's interesting. All right, well, let's get through the rest of the season. We want to go through this relatively quickly. Hopefully there's no injuries, because obviously injuries are on, but I want to kind of go through these early seasons relatively quickly without really paying attention to the NHL. So we're not even going to really look at any trades that happened in this first year. We're just going to obviously sim through these as fast as possible. So that way we can obviously get to obviously the more important things, which is where we're drafting, which I hope is pretty decently early, as apparently had an injury. That must be one of our goalies, because I don't recognize the name. Was it one of our goalies? No, it said Roush, and we have to call somebody up. Did we not have a depth defenseman? I guess we didn't have a depth defenseman, so I guess we'll call up Jalm as the other depth defenseman on our NHL team. And we'll throw him in. Hopefully we don't have any injuries consistently, because, like I said, we're obviously trying to get through the season relatively quickly, so we could kind of find out if we're going to have a high up pick or not in this first year just drafts, which hopefully we do. Hopefully we do. We should have a guaranteed top 5 selection, and there's another injury, and it's to one of our prospects. God damn, man. Why are we getting injuries early on here? This is why I usually don't have injuries on to start off a draft to glory, but I know some of you guys want it to be on probably, so we'll just throw in this random AHL guy named Lamb into this spot, and that should be fine. I had depth forwards already up here, then why did it say roster moves? That's kind of strange. It doesn't really matter at this point, but let's continue. Let's see if we continue to lose games. We have had some games where we've actually scored some goals in, like against Buffalo, which is good, but we're going to keep Roush up here as that defenseman, which I'm going to send down a forward. We are going to just send back Lamb down, and Macchiato, or whatever his name is going to come into the lineup, because apparently we need to have all those forwards in, right? Yeah, that's good. Zahevsky's still out, or whatever his name is. One of those Czechian prospects that we drafted. But what I was saying is, anyways, against Buffalo, we were able to put up 3 goals against their 7. So that's definitely our best showing here early on. As Sever has been injured. I don't think that's one of our prospects, but I do not remember. I might have to honestly turn off injuries after the season, though, because right now it's definitely slowing down this first season a lot more than we want to. Apparently that was an AHL injury, so I don't even really care about the AHL that much. So we should have probably just went best lines on that. That is NHL, which is weird. Why does it say roster moves? We already have depth forwards. Okay, that might be a bit of a bug because we have enough players scratched that we don't need to call up people from the AHL, but it's telling me to call up people. That's kind of weird. Okay, so we have to go back to defense. We'll take Roush back into the lineup, I guess, and we'll just leave it like that. Holy crap, man. What's with these injuries and line adjustments? But why was it telling me to call up people when I didn't need to? It's got to be a bug, right? At least I would assume. Damn, we just lost back-to-back games 10-0 apiece. It's not good. Let's just go continue on that because Hickhill is not a prospect of mine. And Zahesky is back. We don't need to go to roster modes, but we're not going best roster either. So, actually, wait, do we need to send somebody down? Oh, I guess we do need to send somebody down. It'd be more on the offensive side of things, so I guess we'll just send down Mahihako or whatever his name is. Makihaho? I don't know. We'll get him back down. But, yeah, this injury management is kind of annoying me, at least early into this franchise mode. Normally, I don't mind readjusting lines after injuries and stuff like that, but it's just kind of annoying having to deal with this in this first year. Like, I honestly am thinking of turning it off. Another AHL injury, let's just keep going best lines in the AHL at least. Finn Becker. Why do I have to go to roster moves? I don't have to go to roster moves. What do you mean? I'm at 21 and 20. Oh, it's a goalie. Okay, that's why. That one actually makes sense. We'll call up Strassen in. I was confused for a second. But let's call up Strassen so we actually have 2 goalies in the NHL. Because that's our first goaltending injury. But it's only set to 9 out of 100 yet. It's still happening way too frequently. So that's kind of annoying. I was hoping that they'd eventually fix it where basically injuries at 9 out of 100 don't really happen that much. But I guess they didn't. Hopefully we... Oh my goodness. AHL again. Best lines. Do not care about the AHL team in the slightest. We don't have any prospects down there. So just keep going best lines for Burnaby. But yeah, so far, season's going just as planned as Postel's been injured in the NHL. Apparently, we have to go roster moves on this too. Was he a goalie too, or no? No, Becker is currently still hurt, but I don't have to go to roster moves. Why does it keep telling me I have to go to roster moves? I don't. I literally have the depth forwards in the NHL. Yeah, that's definitely a new bug, I think. Doesn't surprise me that there's new bugs, but oh well. I am more curious about this draft class, so that's why I just want to get this season over and done with. Antti Roikko has been injured. I don't have to call up anybody. Why do you keep telling me I have to call up people? There's literally players in my roster that are scratched that I could just throw in here. So annoying. Yeah, we already put Postel in, don't worry. 0-23 though on the season, in case you guys were keeping tabs or not. Obviously all these injuries are kind of clouding the rest of the season. But yeah, we are probably primed to not win a single game this season. We just lost 17-1 to Carolina. That's definitely the highest scoring game I think I've seen. 17-0. Okay. Yeah, these are some of the worst games I think I've seen from a Draft to Glory team. Because I'm pretty sure when I've done Draft to Glories before, I've never lost 17-0. I think for the most part, like I've had like obviously 12-0 and stuff like that, but never 17. If we beat any team, it's going to be like a really bad team. Becker is back, which is good because that's another goalie. We will send Strassen back down. We don't even need to be playing him, so I don't really care. Game against Washington, 10-0. Hey, that's better than 17. 11-2. And Kolars has been injured, which once again, I think I have the roster players, right? No, I don't apparently. I actually have to call somebody up. Oh, is that a goalie? It is a goalie again. Why is it always a goaltender, man? God damn. But yeah, this first year is a little bit strange with these injuries. And that's why, like I said, I'd prefer to keep them off. So if you guys want them off for next season, let me know, because I think it is quite pointless having them on, at least early into the franchise mode. Eventually, later on, when we actually have a full roster, we could probably turn them back on. But right now, it's just taking the momentum out of simulating quite a bit. Kohlers is back, which is good. So once again, we could send Strassen back down. And we'll get Kohlers back in as the goaltender. But even with a 55 overall goalie, I don't think we're going to win games. So it doesn't matter if it's a 51 or a 55. But we are obviously going to be absolutely terrible. We might score still around 100 goals a season, maybe just under. But aside from that, goaltending-wise, we're probably going to allow like 600 plus goals a season, my guess. Because we're allowing at least 10 goals a game, it seems like right now. So it might be even closer to 1,000 goals against, which will be insane. We're even losing 11-0 to teams like San Jose, which is insane. All right, we have another NHL injury, though. Where is it? Okay, I guess I could just go roster, edit lines. Why is it telling me to go to roster moves, though, every single time? That's definitely something that isn't in NHL 25, so that's definitely a bug of some sort. Best lines in the HL again. But yeah, if we're losing to teams like I said, like San Jose 11-0, there's no chance we're even going to pick up a single win in this first year. But like I said, that's going to be a kind of an interesting thing, because eventually down the road, we're going to be like a 50-win team maybe if our team develops nicely. So who knows, maybe we'll be on a complete reverse roll of things. It would be kind of cool to take this team from a 0-win season in their first year to randomly like a 60-win season by year 20 or something like that. So, but who knows, maybe this team will never be good. Because maybe we'll never have a good draft class, but I am hopeful that this team will build up in the right way. Obviously, it starts with having a good draft in this first full year, which hopefully we could get off to a good start. Obviously, this offseason coming up as well, though, we are going to have to look for some new scouts, though. That's one thing, because right now we just have a bunch of mediocre scouts assigned for the NHL and AHL and all that. So this offseason, if you guys can remind me, though, we need to start looking for better scouts, so that way we could actually find some good steals in later rounds. As apparently Benak's been injured, which is not great, considering he's technically our best potential player. So I guess we will throw in somebody random here for the time being, like Kim Hervinen. Is that what his name is? Consta Hervinen. Never mind. I don't know who Kim Hervinen is, but we'll just throw a random person in these spots. Doesn't matter too much, but I'll probably just put Hervinen in those spots so it's easier to adjust. There you go. All right. Yeah, we're not winning a single game. We're 0-60. If we beat a team, it would have to be either San Jose or Chicago, probably, right? As Benaka's already back. I'm kind of curious on the stat lines on this team, and I didn't want to click that. What the hell is even happening? I didn't even open the X Factor tab thing. I didn't even press on the bumper, so I'm confused. But this franchise mode is off to a rocky start. Weird as shit, man. Alright. 0-62. Yes, 0-62. A 5-0 loss is pretty good. We're going to just go this and go continue simulating. But 5-0 loss to Vegas is actually probably one of our strongest games defensively of the entire season. Which is kind of weird considering Vegas is actually a good team. So, game against Utah looks like, I think, another loss. But I didn't see what the scoreline was. But I would assume it's another loss, because this team is going to go 0-82 at this point. Which will be interesting to see the plus minuses. Like, you'll probably have guys over a plus or minus 100 at this point easily. I wonder who's going to have the best plus minus on the team and the best stat line. Like, that's always the fun part about these drafted glories, is you just never know what could happen in these first few years in terms of stats and all that. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what we build up over these next few years. Like, hopefully we can have at some point like a full line of random like players from one country only, so they're all playing with their fellow countrymen. That'd be kind of neat. As Benak's been injured again. Damn, man, that's not great. At this point, he seems like a bit of an injury-prone player, getting injured 2 times. So hopefully that doesn't hurt his growth a bit too much. Obviously, we should do a lot of off-season focuses and stuff in next episode 2 to try and help with those guys that we have on our team, so that way they actually develop because obviously kind of stuff like that could help things a lot. Let's go with Hervin in again. Perfect. All right, 0-72. Yeah, it looks like we're definitely not winning a single game in his first year, which is, I think, worse, if I'm not mistaken, than some of my other draft glories, because I'm pretty sure, I feel like the Albuquerque Aliens maybe had a win in their first season, or a couple, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Game against Montreal. Damn, we almost beat Columbus. 4-2 losses. Pretty good compared to some of these other games. Boston 5-2 loss. What about Detroit? Probably a loss, right? And 11-0. Yeah, looks like we're going to lose every game at this point. Let's have a close game at least near the end, right? Let's have a close game near the end of the season. 9-3 loss. Calgary on the road. 7-0 loss, and in New Jersey 14-1 loss, Pittsburgh 11-0 loss. So our first season, no wins whatsoever on the year for the Europe United, which is a big tongue twister. It's going to be annoying for me to say that all the time, but no points on the year, not even an overtime loss. So that's definitely a tough first year, but it's going to be interesting to look at these player stats and of course finding out where we're going to be drafting in this first season. So let's take a look at some stats. Actually, let's hide the stats so you guys can't see anything for the time being. And let me hide my eyes so I can't see anything for the time being. And let's go to our centers. I'm trying to hide my eyes so I can't see anything. There we go. That's good. And boom. So first centers, obviously this is one of our first prospects. Jamirio Reber had 27 points in 82 games, minus 224. Very rough first season for him, but 27 points is actually pretty good when you think about how much our team score on paper. So a solid season for Reber. I will definitely take 8 goals and 19 assists on a draft glory team. Aside from that, Adam Benak played 80 games, had 16 points. Much better plus minus, but minus 190. Only 14 penalty minutes. Looks like we had some power play goals, which is good this year. So he had an okay season. And then also Cyril Keller, 15 points. So it looks like our guys that we drafted did okay and led the team at least, which is a good thing to see. So these 3 did good. Everybody else is not a prospect of ours, so I don't really care too much. From a left wing perspective, Mete, 18 points in 82 games, minus 230. Like I said, not too bad. Seems like all the guys that we drafted are actually leading us, so that's at least, like I said, a positive. From a right wing perspective, Vít Zahevsky had 12 points in 75 games, minus 212. All right. So if we look at our forwards, then the players that we drafted pretty much left the team in points. Zahevsky only didn't finish above Okani, though, because he missed 7 games. But technically, all those forwards we drafted were the top players on the team, basically. And by far, Reber was the best forward. He was literally almost 10 points up on the next best player. So shout out to Jamirio Reber from Switzerland, who is our second round pick. Doesn't have any potential, but he might be a good player to have for us for these first few years. And then from a defensive standpoint, Vapanik's the only defensive prospect, and he had 13 points in 82 games, minus 257, but 13 points to lead the defensive core. I will definitely take that. And then goalies, obviously none of these are our prospects, but both of them had 814 and 816 save percentage, almost 9 goals or 10 goals against for each of them, around 9.5 more so. But that's insane. Kollars did pick up an assist as a goalie though, which is pretty sick. So there we go. Technically our prospects were the best players on the team, which you love to see. And yeah, like I said, Reber was by far the best player. Plus minus wise, if we look at like for a player that played all 82 games, this Levi Heisela guy was only minus 109, but he probably wasn't getting a lot of ice time. Didn't even score a single goal in 82 games. And then the worst plus minus on the team was Vapanik on defense, minus 257. All right. We don't really care too much about the rest of the league. I do want to look at the AHL just to see how that prospect I drafted did. He had 8 assists. Like I said, he's not going to ever get to play on our NHL team, but I was kind of curious on his results as a minor leaguer. So there's all that. Now comes the big question, obviously. First and foremost, who's going to win the Stanley Cup in year number 1? And then who are we going to be able to draft in this upcoming year? Obviously, we have our sights set on 2 of those elite players potentially. But are we going to have a pick where we could actually draft one? If we fall some out of 5th overall, we are absolutely screwed. but I think we're probably locked in with a top 3 selection this year. So, who's going to win the Cup in 2026? Is it going to be a repeat for the Florida Panthers again, or something different? Let's find out. The answer to that, if the sim engine will work fast, is going to be... Oh, never mind, it doesn't show it yet. It should be soon. The sim engine's a little slow right now, but maybe not. Who's going to be the champion? The Edmonton Oilers, they actually finally get it done after losing 2 times to the Florida Panthers in the finals. They will win the Stanley Cup in 2026. Abbotsford actually also repeats as a Calder Cup champion, apparently, I guess. Because last year they beat, wasn't it Charlotte? I think so. But that's an interesting one. All right. So shout out to Connor McDavid and the Oilers for winning the Stanley Cup. Who did they beat for the Stanley Cup? The Pittsburgh Penguins. All right. So that's kind of an interesting one. I don't think the Penguins are going to get to the finals in real life, but that's actually kind of a neat final, though. Obviously, McDavid versus Sid, but I don't think the Penguins are good enough to get that far in real life. All right, let's take a look at that playoff bracket for fun, too. All right, so Toronto got knocked out in the first round. Love to see that. Aside from that, the Sens didn't make the playoffs, or did the Habs, which is interesting. Okay. Florida was also knocked out in the first round. That's a pretty big surprise. And then the AHL, it was Abbotsford and Springfield in the finals. Okay. All right, any awards for our team? We probably have a Bill Masterton because of the plus-minus, but I do want to take a look at that and just see if anybody won it on our team. Don't really care too much about these other awards. And yeah, Vapanik, since he had the worst plus-minus, will win the Bill Masterton. So our first award winner of the series will go to Vapanik. He will go down in channel history as our first award winner. And shout out to Dean Evison for winning the Jack Adams. Actually, I guess this is my first franchise mode with real coaches. I didn't even think about that. Because technically, when I was doing my Islanders franchise mode, that came out before the coach update. So this is the first time we're going to have real coaches in this franchise mode. Technically, I've been always used to just generated coaches, but that's kind of nice. Kind of nice. So... there we go. AHL, just skim through that briefly as well. Looks like Mason Geertsen won an award for our AHL team. So, that's an interesting one. He was just a cap whale for the AHL too, so. Alright, now comes the question. Where are the European United going to be drafting in year 1? Are we going to stay at number 1? Are we going to have terrible odds somehow and fall to 3? I just hope regardless we get either Dave or Tyson DeLuca. Let's see what happens. The answer to that is we are going to be falling to 3rd, which is fine, but that means we will be probably taking Dave Antonio with our selection because likely DeLuca goes beforehand. So Ottawa moves to number 1, Seattle will have number 2, and we will probably, like I said, get Dave on our team, which is exciting to get a Dave on our team. But I don't know if DeLuca is going to be better or not, but I'm excited to get Dave regardless. And retired players don't really care too much about this early in franchise mode, but the usual suspects as you'd expect to see. And same with Carey Price, San Jose Sharks legend. Boom. All right. Did we lose any coaches? Joel Quenneville retired after 1 year. Well, that's good. He doesn't even deserve to be back in the league, in my opinion. But yeah, we did not lose a single coach, so that's all good. There's 3 new players that are apparently scouts. Petrovic, Lewis, and Hunt. All right. And now we can actually take a look at this draft class and hopefully have some good idea of what we want to pick up in next episode. So we have a very early selections, of course. Obviously, if we go to our draft board, we are going to be drafting 3rd in the first round and then 1st in every other round. So I'm hoping we could get a lot of good players on this team. So let's take a look at what we could get. So Antonio is probably medium elite for sure, but we don't know guaranteed. But obviously, it kind of would have been nice to get DeLuca, but he is a DFD, so I'm not really mad that we didn't get DeLuca. But obviously, we're not going to be able to take Appleby. So Dave Antonio is likely going to be our first round selection, so I'm obviously going to be removing DeLuca, I think, from our list. Aside from that, obviously, the rest of these players are not going to be available to us because they're going to be early first round picks. So I'm going to have to see who we could potentially get in future rounds. So let's unpin all those guys. What do we have options to us in later rounds? Let's see. A lot of Canadians. Looks like after. Ooh. Wow. Okay. Looks like we have not a lot of players eligible to us this early on. Technically, after a first-round pick, Thomas Albertozer is the next best thing, which is a medium top 6 offensive defenseman. Don't mind that. It looks like he actually be decent overall, too, so he might be an okay pick. Aside from that, trying to see who else we have options about. Hungarian, that's probably a real player. Doman Christoph, I don't even know how to pronounce that last name, Sazongoth. We'll pin him. He has a medium bottom 6. What else we got here? Danish guy, Zach Kearns. We'll pin him. There's a Frenchman in Ariel Bartley. Definitely not a real guy. There's a Polish dude in Eli Biggs, who's actually from playing in Russia, but he's a Polish dude, so we'll pin him. That's an interesting one. Since he's playing in Russia, he's actually still eligible to us, even though he is Polish. It's just because he's Polish. There's also Colin Thorne. There's a couple Swiss guys as well, Dallas Keatley, and also Yanis Lutz, who plays in the OHL. He must be real. There's also Kamas from Czechia, from the Penticton Vs. And there's also Festerini we could pin. There's actually a lot more in the later rounds now. Kazakhstan used to be part of Russia, so we can't take this dude. Aside from that, there's another Polish dude in Harrison Barnett. We'll pin him too. Okay, looks like there's going to be some options to us. There's the goaltender I was looking at, Henry Glenn. He's a guaranteed French starter. We're definitely going to probably take him or Olchevik at some point so we can get ourselves some goalies in. But, yeah, it's not going to be a strong class for us other than our first round selection. But at least it'll still be able to build up our team. So, for sure, the first round is definitely going to easily be Dave. Afterwards, I honestly don't know what we're going to take, but obviously we're going to keep with the system of drafting only from these countries for the time being. But we're not going to be able to get a lot of good players other than Dave probably on this roster. But excited to see what he could be like. And like I said, I feel like he's kind of like the perfect player for us just because he kind of fits this franchise mode a bit and this series a bit because his name is Dave. And also because he looks like he plays for the Ice Tigers, even though that's technically Liberec, so, or Liberec. I don't know if it's pronounced like that or not. But anything else we want to take a look at before we end this episode? I don't think so. I can't take a look at progress reports yet, so actually I can take a look at progress reports. Did we get any growth from the guys I drafted yet? Benax up to a 68. I mean, that's not bad. He is getting growth. Same with Reber, same with Keller. Aside from that, Masterliski, 16 points. He's already 20 years old. Zahevsky up to a 62. Vapanik's up to a 60, and that's it. Alright, looks like we're getting some growth, but obviously it's not going to be anything substantial. So, anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Europe United Draft to Glory franchise mode. So, in next episode, we will take it to the first draft. Hopefully, we grab ourselves some good players aside from Dave Antonio and start building this roster up so that we can maybe win a game at some point soon. But obviously, we're not in a rush. It might take us 5 years before we win a game, but I'm excited to at least get ourselves an elite player onto this roster that actually kind of fits what we're trying to build up here. So, let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time.